Dan Wiederer with you, alongside Kevin Fishbain of The Athletic. We are on the doorstep of NFL free agency. The new league year starts in the coming days. That means there is a lot of work ahead for new Bears general manager Ryan Poles, coach Matt Eberflus. The roster at Halas Hall needs major revisions. We obviously had the major trade of Khalil Mack to Los Angeles Chargers at the tail end of last week, capping off a very eventful week in the league. Kevin, I'm here today with you to run through 5 free agency related questions and storylines that our audience will be interested in. And let's start here. Just how eventful was last week in the league with all that went on with big names and big trades and big deals going around the league?
I love it, Dan. It was, it would have been almost more fun. No, I don't know what would have made it more fun. It was very entertaining. The NFL dominates the calendar all year round. And I think there is an NBA influence here, right? Because how many NFL players love the NBA and love LeBron James and have seen the way LeBron James has engineered his way to different teams in his career? And now you have the Russell Wilson situation, and you have what's gone on with Carson Wentz, and you have these teams like making these moves and fulfilling a player's request to be traded. And a guy could be, for the Colts, he could be maybe your guy taking you to playoffs one year, and 2 months later, he's gone. It's fascinating. It's entertaining. It gives us a lot more work to do, of course, but nobody's here to hear about us complain about that. But it's funny because I love the idea of it's a funny thing because the NFL has always been about parity, right? But that was before this. This whole player movement thing we've seen in the last 3, 4, 5 years is unlike anything the league has seen before. And I think it's great. And I think, again, it reminds me of NBA free agency a little bit. That's got that juice of guys can really, take ownership over their own contracts and go to where they want to go.
Who would have ever imagined that a standout receiver being suspended for a full year for gambling on his team in the sport that he plays would be like the 5th biggest headline for the league in one calendar week, right? I mean, like that happened early in the week, and then you have Rodgers coming back to Green Bay and Wilson immediately traded to Denver, and then obviously the Khalil Mack trade and the Carson Wentz news and all the things that swirled around, and you go, holy cow, that kind of week is unprecedented in most years, most leagues. And here we are, we just experienced that the Khalil Mack trade is probably one rung above the Calvin Ridley thing. And then beyond that, it's quarterback storylines that always dominate this league. So crazy head spinning week. I don't know if you have thoughts on any of those other top 5 storylines of the week, but my goodness, that was a lot that happened.
Yeah. I think I'll just say I was not surprised about Aaron Rodgers going back to Green Bay. The Russell Wilson thing was surprising just because, in a sense of the timing, it's just like bam. There's no murmurs necessarily that build up to, even though we always kind of knew that was going to happen. The Carson Wentz thing, I mean, it's just like, do you remember when Carson Wentz came here his rookie season? It was week 2 of 2016, Monday Night Football, and he was unbelievable. and I remember sitting there being like, and Jay got carted off that game. I think Eddie Goldman got carted off that game. It was a bad Bears loss, and it was like, all right, this is gonna be a long year. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, this Wentz guy is really good. And then you see the way things ended with him in Philadelphia. Learn more about him, the person, and then the way things went in Indianapolis. Like you could feel like Ballard could not wait to get Wentz out of town.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just like the weird, and then Washington's like, hey, this guy could take us to the promised land. I mean, we're going to get to this with a former Bears quarterback, but the egos in this league are unbelievable because every general manager, head coach will convince themselves that they could take player X and make it work when team Y did not.
If you remember, there was some false chatter in the spring of 2021 about the Bears' heavy interest in Carson Wentz. It was never true, and part of the reason it wasn't true is because there was some serious questions within the building about Carson Wentz's ability to lift an organization to the next level. The Colts obviously rolled those dice, made a trade to get him, and a year later were like, you got to go, and you got to get out of here fast. And to your point, Riverboat Ron is on the other end saying, hey, let's roll the dice on this and figure out what we can do with this. That's an interesting one. The Ridley thing, before we tie a bow on that, I'm okay with punishment for Calvin Ridley. I'm okay with acknowledging that he made a foolish decision and it's one that doesn't reflect well on the league. But does the punishment fit the crime? A year suspension for a guy really placing bets within from what I understand, a 5-day period, most of them parlays that included the Falcons, and saying, boy, this is not a look the league can handle, after the league has partnered with every gambling entity in the history of gambling entities to boost their own profile. That one stunned me, that they went to that degree of punishment with not anything else that felt like, whoa, that was egregious and that was terrible, and I can't believe we're doing that.
Yeah, I wonder if Calvin Ridley erred in being the first, right?
Yeah, like, I mean, they made an example of him, right? I mean,
and like, listen, I'm not going to argue with the whole integrity of the game thing. Like, I get it, but you're right. It's just a weird thing. Like, I was like clicking a video to watch. It was an analysis of the Calvin Ridley thing, and the autoplay ad was for DraftKings. Like, it's just, I mean, like, yeah, obviously, I don't think there should be a world that exists in which the players or coaches or anybody in the league should be allowed to bet on football. I get that. I'm not saying there should be, but I mean, what year for the guy who also, like, you know, and we don't have to go down this tangent, but, you know, he was out with, you know, he was like dealing with mental health issues too. And like, I don't know, the whole thing is just, it's weird. It's weird to see that kind of punishment for that kind of decision. I bet when he was making those bets, it was like an NFL team or something that like sent, like he could have signed up and used like Go Dolphins as like as like a promo.
Right, as his promo, right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's where we are right now. I'm going to be very interested to see if there is a reduction of that punishment at some point and what happens going forward with that. All right, second question of our 5-question topic list here. This is a yes or no one. Treat it like it's you're in your 3rd grade classroom. You can answer yes or no and then provide a slight explanation of your reasoning. Will the Bears make a big splash in free agency this month?
No. No. I mean, okay. Is DJ Chark a big splash?
I don't think so.
I don't, you know, maybe Ryan Jensen from a financial standpoint would be big. I love watching that guy play. Like, I think that would be a phenomenal move. But I just don't think that there's the players available because of the franchise tag. Like, you just don't have those guys. And Ryan Poles made it clear he's not going to be the type of GM who is going to, I don't know. So I feel like you know what's funny, Dan? You're going to text me next Wednesday when the Bears sign Christian Kirk. And you're gonna, because I'm gonna like the Bears' big splash in free agency was Christian Kirk. And you're gonna remind me that I said they would not make a big splash because like it's all relative. Like I think they're gonna sign somebody and give him a lot of money. He's gonna have a featured role, but I just don't see there's nobody available who's really gonna change the complexion of this franchise.
I'm not even sure they're going to go that far. I mean, you've listened to Ryan Poles on multiple occasions now tell us that he is waiting for the 2nd and 3rd waves of free agency to do all of his work, or most of his work anyway, and that there's an opportunity in those phases of free agency to not only add volume to your roster and sign more guys because you've got, you know, lower price tags and you can spend more money on more guys, but you can also find guys who are motivated and who got passed over in the first wave of free agency and feel like, okay, I didn't get the deal that I expected to get. Give me a short-term prove-it deal, and I'm going to go give you everything I have in 2022. And Ryan Pace seems like he's got the patience and discipline to do that. There's no better time to have the patience and discipline than in your first year, right? There's not a lot expected of you. The entire regime before you has been blown up, and now you've got the opportunity to play that game a little bit. And so I don't think they're going to make a big splash in free agency. I think, as a matter of fact, we might get to the end of Wednesday night, the first day of the new league year, and have nothing to write about. My first year covering the Vikings back in 2000, and what year is that? 2011. It would have been the spring of 2012. They didn't do anything. I remember I was just waiting the whole day. I'm like, okay, when's something going to pop? What are they going to do? And then you get to the end of the day, and you've got to fill, space in the newspaper back then with the Vikings did nothing today, and writing about what it means. I think the Bears are in a similar situation here where they may not do much of anything and possibly nothing at all on the first day and a half of free agency as they wait for markets to settle and then fill holes. Now, listen, as well as I do, they got 24 players on their current roster coming out of contract. Maybe you're re-signing a DeAndre Houston Carson here or there. You're making these familiarity signings that keep your roster whole. But I think Ryan Poles, rather, this is going to be hard in the months ahead to not make that mistake. Just has to stick to his philosophy, and I think he will, because I think he understands that this is a long play and they're not one piece away. You've mentioned previously what Ryan Pace inherited in 2015. I don't remember their big splash free agency in 2015. Was it McPhee? Was he the first one?
Yeah, it was, and it was at like 3:01 p.m. too. I mean, it was
Was there anyone else in that class? What was the Bears class that year? Right, like the fact that you're staring to the heavens tells you that it probably wasn't a.
Here it was Pernell McPhee, Antrell Roll, and Eddie Royal.
Eddie Royal, okay, yeah.
That was their big splash.
So, like, that's what you're looking at when you're in this stage of being 6-11 and retooling and doing all that. So I think we're in agreement here to different levels, but that the Bears will not make a big splash in free agency. Sorry, audience. Sorry to break your heart. All right. What have you learned about Ryan Poles in his first 6 weeks on the job? And how it applies to where he goes here in the next 6 weeks?
I think going to this point about the second and third waves, he just seems like a very calculated, serious, patient guy. Like he just, like we talked in the last episode about, you mentioned the way he looked at this roster, and he was very open and transparent and candid. And I just feel like I just get like a pragmatic sense to him, like hearing this guy talking. Again, obviously our interaction with him have been limited so far, and we're going to learn a lot more about him next week based on the moves he makes. But I just get a sense that this is somebody who's going to be like very calculated. And Dan, it's funny because I'm going to do it again. I feel like you could make the argument that Ryan Pace was kind of similar in his first couple of years here before it turned into win now mode for 4 straight years. Like, I think Pace actually did do that. It's easy to forget that now, but I can see Poles just being very calculated with his moves and being very patient. And I think that reflects the kind of personality he has.
Yeah, I think there's a benefit from coming from an organization that has been a fixture on Conference Championship Sunday for the past 4 years. And it's that what championship football teams look like, right? And you understand that when you look at this football team, it's not a championship football team. Rich Campbell and I always used to have a joke that we know better than anyone in the world what 6-10 football looks like, right? Because we covered it a lot in Minnesota and Washington and Chicago. You see with your eyes at an OTA practice, at a training camp practice, you go, that's 6-10 football right there, right? And because you've seen it and you know what that looks like, talent-wise, organization-wise, all those different things. I think Ryan Poles right now knows what Super Bowl contending football looks like. And I think he's destined to get there and determined to get there while being very comfortable, in your point, in being calculated and understanding the long view of this thing and understanding that this isn't about trying to make a great first impression in 2022. It's about, hey, how can we start to get those stairs to be climbed in 2023, go into 2024 with everyone in the league talking about us being positioned to make a meaningful run. And so I think that comfort level and that patience will be there in the early stages. I think eventually it's going to be tested, right? There's a temptation to show people, look, we're not going to be this laughing stock of the NFC North and otherwise. And Ryan Poles is going to have to juggle that as he goes. But out of the gates, I think we're going to see a calm, calculated approach, as you mentioned. All right, 2 more questions on the docket. Number 4, the Bears are facing a major reset at wide receiver, right? And we've talked about what they need to do to help Justin Fields become the franchise-changing, standout star quarterback that they want him to be. What do you envision this looking like this year and in the years ahead? And as sort of a linked question off of that, what happens with Allen Robinson when his contract expires on Wednesday afternoon?
Well, this is the Luke Getsy situation too, because I feel like Getsy and Poles are going to be like, we still don't really know Luke Getsy and what he wants out of wide receivers. And then it's about finding receivers that fit Justin Fields and complimenting Darnell Mooney, who, like, as much as everybody loves Darnell Mooney, Dan, is he a number 1 quote unquote receiver? Like, maybe, I don't know. And so I think you just need to, I look back to 2018 when they signed Allen Robinson, signed Taylor Gabriel, drafted Anthony Miller. Like, I don't know. It's a different situation because that was a team that we learned later on was going for a little bit more win now. And this one might take like lesser swings at the position, but I can see the similar situation.
But it was year 2 with Mitch, right? And you were trying to get him help.
Yeah. So I can see, you find that big body possession receiver, a go up and get it red zone guy, a speed, Ryan Poles from Kansas City. He knows from McCole Hardman and Tyreek Hill and those guys. Again, you're not going to find Tyreek Hill, but finding guys who have that potential. So yeah, I mean, the whole receiver room is going to look so different, and it could look even different in 2023 too. Like this, they could get 3 guys this year, and maybe only one of them works out, and they move on from the R2 and they take more swings. Allen Robinson will be playing for the. I wish I had a team in mind. I think it'd be fun. I was thinking Detroit. I think the Detroit Lions.
That's one that I got in mind too. That gives Allen Robinson 2 things. It gives him a return to his hometown, and it gives him a chance to play the Bears twice a year in the NFC North, which I think to some extent would appeal to him, even though the people that may have created some acrimony between Allen Robinson and the organization are no longer here. I think he would love to just remind them, hey, look, like you had me in your possession and something went wrong and it didn't happen.
Who's your other team?
I think the New England Patriots may be involved. It's a team that also needs receiver help for a young quarterback, and I think Robinson could be one of those guys that fits in that type of organization. We'll see. I think there's probably 5 or 6 teams that could use a guy like Robinson, a veteran presence. It's all going to be a matter of how he gets paid, right, and what the market sets up as. Mike Williams signs his extension with the LA Chargers coming off a season that had numbers comparable to things that Allen Robinson has achieved in his career. And you can bet your bottom dollar that Allen Robinson and his camp took down those notes and said, hey, this is what Mike Williams' deal was. There is no reason that we shouldn't be paid in a similar ballpark to that. It's going to be fascinating to see what he gets. His exit from Chicago is imminent. Anybody holding out hopes that the Bears with a new regime are going to work things out and keep him around Halas Hall are dreaming. That's not happening. Allen Robinson will have a new jersey, a new team, a new contract on Wednesday, probably by the middle of the evening, and we'll see where that goes. As for the Bears reset, I think you and I talked about on the previous video talking about the Khalil Mack trade that this draft capital that the Bears brought back allows them to be very, very aggressive on day 2 of the draft in seeking out a receiver. And the supply and demand curve of receivers in the NFL draft in recent years has been very beneficial to teams needing receivers because it's going deep now. And there are guys now that are making immediate impacts in year 1 without the 3-year transition that used to be the norm, 10 or 15 years ago. And so you've got this loaded draft class that allows you to stay put with your picks, 39, 48, 71, and get somebody that can help you right away in those areas. I don't know if you've got names out. I know you're into mock draft season. Mock draft season is coming, but like a handful of guys that should be available for certain on day 2. Sky Moore from Western Michigan, Treylon Burks, Arkansas, Christian Watson, North Dakota State, David Bell, Purdue. Those are going to be the lower tiers. And then you cross your fingers and you say, what if injuries push Jamison Williams or John Mechie to the 39th pick? What if a Chris Olave, which I don't see this happening, but it's the dream scenario, right? Pie in the sky scenario. What if he slips out of day 1 and you get to the Thursday night pillow hit for Ryan Poles and you say, man, what if we have an opportunity to move up and get Justin Fields, a guy he already knows and is comfortable with and has chemistry with? Do we make a jump up to add that familiarity, dependability piece? I think there's a lot to happen, and it's going to be an exciting night with the opportunity to do something for the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, I think all those guys have like some of the skill sets we talked about and I think there's this, because you're doing a reset, you can be open. Like David Bell and Chris Olave are completely different receivers, yes. But you need a David Bell type. Yeah. And you need a Chris Olave type. Like you need anybody you can get. So I think they're in, as you said, really good position, having 2 picks, in the top 50. And so in that 39 to 48, that's what they have. That they should be able to get a receiver who can start day 1.
And you can see, you're right, like having 2 picks, 10 picks apart allows you to field a run, right? And figure out, okay, do we wait here? Is there still enough guys on the board that we can wait till 48? Or do we got to pounce here at 39 because things are happening quick, fast, in a hurry? It's going to be fascinating.
Do you want breaking news?
Maybe this video won't post until well after the breaking news, but give it to us anyway.
We can bring people inside to our offices to see what it's like on a Friday morning. The Bears are releasing Tariq Cohen.
Oh, not a shock. Yeah. All right, let's move on.
Question 5.
From Tariq Cohen's fabulous 2017 draft class, my final question on this video is, what is the deal with Mitch Trubisky? Open-ended question. Go for it. Seinfeld-esque. What's the deal with Mitch Trubisky?
What's the deal with Mitchell Trubisky? First of all, people are all over the board with Mitch and Mitchell.
What is happening?
I think it's he said to us on day one, you can call him Mitch. I don't know why not just call him
Mitch. Schefter seems intent on sticking with Mitchell, and it's driving me crazy.
I have some theories on why he does that, but that could be for another podcast. What are the ESPN 1000 guys? They have their where they just go off kilter and their special expletive podcast. Yeah, you should have one of those, and we can get into that.
This is always unfiltered. You can say whatever you want here.
That's true. Look, you talk about supply demand, right? So I guess so. Carson Wentz has moved. Jimmy Garoppolo is still out there, but you got to deal with his contract, his injury, and then there's Jameis Winston. There's Taylor Heineke. There's Marcus Mariota.
Very ordinary draft class.
I think that the best thing that happened for Mitch Trubisky was he threw 8 passes last year.
6 completions, right?
Yeah, and I just think that people, it goes back to that ego thing, right? People are convincing themselves, because there are GMs around the league who had Mitch Trubisky with a first-round grade in 2017. And those GMs are convincing themselves that what happened here was all Matt Nagy's fault. It was all Ryan Pace's fault. And they can make Mitch Trubisky into what the Bears thought they had in Mitch Trubisky. So I think you have an ego thing. You have so many teams that need quarterbacks and not enough quarterbacks. You got terrible draft class of quarterbacks. All due respect to Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis, but there's just is Justin Fields will be the number 1 overall pick in this draft.
Yes,
without a doubt. So I think those things are working in Mitch Trubisky's favor, and he's got a lot of people who are gonna say nice things about him publicly, whether it's the team he used to play for in Buffalo or very high profile members of the media. And it's working out well for him. Look, you and I both covered Mitch for 4 years. The guy is like the consummate professional. He's a great leader. Teammates love the guy. And so, in a weird way, that stuff plays in his favor when there's this little unknown because when I say unknown, because you have these coaches and coordinators and GMs convincing themselves of what he can be. I mean, look, you could make the playoffs with Mitch Trubisky, right?
Been done twice.
I just don't know if Mitch Trubisky's not the reason you're making the playoffs.
Listen, I went on Twitter on Thursday responding to a blurb that Tom Pelissero wrote on NFL.com saying that in years 2 through 4, that Trubisky compared favorably to Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, and Phillip Rivers. And I spit out my Cheerios and was like, what are we doing if we're putting on an infomercial for Mitch Trubisky that likens him to 2 certain Hall of Famers and another guy who's going to be in the conversation for many years to come, and throws out the idea that, oh, by the way, we don't have 52 starts worth of evidence of Mitch to draw from. Kev, look, I get this reputation as being a Trubisky hater, and I'm not a Trubisky hater. I love the way all those things you talked about, the way he goes about his business, the way he's driven, the way he's a team-first guy and could have left here burning bridges left and right, and yet at the tail end of his time in Chicago actually helped to save the jobs of the general manager who drafted him and the head coach who obviously did not take him to the levels that he should have gone to. The other good thing that happened for Mitch Trubisky after his Bears contract expired was that Nick Foles came out in that odd summer press conference and basically said, this offense is a joke. Andy Dalton struggled. Justin Fields struggled. Allen Robinson's numbers fell off. The Bears stayed in the bottom tier of the NFL in terms of offensive performance. And everybody says it's all Matt Nagy's fault. I was always of the belief that that's a big pie chart. Mitch, Matt, you can break that up. It was never 100-0 on either side. You got to figure out what that looks like going forward. But the one thing I always tell people, a couple things. Number one, a very, 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 very respected talent evaluator in Indianapolis at the Combine said, go back and watch Trubisky's final start with the Bears, right? Playoff game in New Orleans. Takes them to their final play of a lopsided loss to get in the end zone. And by the way, that final drive was really sort of a painful dink and dunk march down the field, down 3 scores in a playoff game on the last, drive of your time in Chicago. Go rogue, chuck one deep, try to make something happen. That's neither here nor there. 52 starts, though. That's a big body of work. We ranked them at the Chicago Tribune at the tail end of the 2021 season, or 2020 season, rather. You get to number 9, Kev, and you're already in forgettable territory, right? That's not a good place to be for a quarterback drafted in the top 5, where it's what were the signature wins and moments? You got Tampa, right? in 2018, you've got a couple games in Detroit where he made big plays late. You've got the Dallas game on Thursday Night Football, which was supposed to be the revival of Mitch in 2019. It didn't turn out to be. There's not signature moments. There were so many more big plays missed than big plays made. And I hope that whatever team overpays for Mitch understands that they have access to that video. Simple subscription, NFL Game Pass. Watch all 52 of them. You'll come away with similar impressions of what the Mitch Trubisky experience was. I also think that the media has hyped Mitch as being this splash signing. He's going to get paid in free agency, but it's also going to be a short-term prove-it type deal that we talked about where somebody's going to say, okay, you're going to get an opportunity to start. Let's see what you got to do. But nobody's going to invest with a high amount of guaranteed money and like 4 or 5 years for Mitch.
Yeah. There's a difference between Mitch Trubisky being the talk of the combine and getting ready to get paid, and Mitch Trubisky being talk of the combine and getting ready to be paid because he's a great quarterback. Like, it's just there's circumstances that are working out in his favor. And I hope the team he goes to runs a lot of boot action and gets him outside the pocket and has a good offensive line and has a running game and has a defense. Like, again, you can win with Mitch Trubisky. And I think the right offense can get there. And you know, maybe there are little things that he's improved upon. I just like, you know, during that time in Buffalo, I don't know, but just like the number of quarterbacks who can go through what he went through for those first 4 seasons, then suddenly turn out to be who, you know, maybe some people think he still can be. It's very, 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 very rare. Hope for the best for Mitch Trubisky, but it's just, I think it's awesome for him. Props to him for being in this situation. But I'm very interested to see what a team does with him, because, like, again, what the Bears tried to do with him did not work. And so, but then again, when things were open, he didn't hit the guys either. It just was, there was a lot more nuance to things that went wrong here. But yeah, I don't know what, Seattle? Maybe
I have no idea. I really have no idea.
New York Giants?
The Giants one is the one that's interesting, right? Because of the Daboll connection and the ability to, you know, potentially challenge Daniel Jones. I don't know why the Giants would go down that road when they're trying to see what they have in Daniel Jones and why Mitch would sign up for that, given what we've talked about, supply and demand, and an opportunity to probably get a definitive starting role somewhere. It's going to be fascinating to see. You gave me the perfect headline. I'm going to pull out the Mitch discussion for a standalone video. You can win with Mitch Trubisky. Free agency preview, right there it is. That's it. You want clicks on YouTube? We're going to get them. We're going to roll them in the early parts of next week, and it'll be fun to see where it lands.
You can.
Here's the other good news. Free agency this year. We've talked about how painstaking it can be to not really know when things are happening. Free agency this year falls on the calendar, the sports calendar, where Thursday and Friday, the NCAA tournament is going on. And so you got this double dip of working the phones, making calls, checking social media, figuring out what's going on. But you can watch 32 games in an afternoon.
That's true. And we're going to have Major League Baseball free agency at the same time.
Yeah. That'll be
kind of wild. Yeah. But I don't know. You're right, because I usually hate that it overlaps, but then again, you're stuck in your office. You're like constantly, you got the TV on anyways, so
may as well.
Yeah.
All right, buckle in. You got a long week ahead of you. Hope you get some rest. We covered a lot of ground here, and hopefully it's informative to this audience. As always, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll have more great guests like Kevin Fishbain of The Athletic making his debut this weekend on the channel. Thanks for joining me, Kev.
Thanks for having me, Dan. And hi, Rich.
Enjoyed it.